Welcome to Dire Straits Live. I'm Amanda Monty.
I'm Tracy Clark-Flory.
Today we are talking about the hetero-politics of the Department of Homeland Security. Given that our podcast, Dire Straits, is all about deconstructing heteronormative culture and politics and imagining new ways forward, we felt like this week was pretty urgent times to do a bonus episode on the state-sponsored hypermasculine violence we are seeing across the country right now and the resistance to it.
Yes, indeed. So this is one of our special podcast episodes that's recorded live on Substack in front of a virtual audience. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. These are going to be more casual, kind of chit-chatty, unedited versions of the pod. And we've been releasing these up until recently on our Substack show page as a special bonus for paid subscribers, but now we're going to also start pushing these to the podcast apps too.
Yes. So if you are listening to this after the fact on a podcasting app, you will have to upgrade to a paid subscription to hear the whole thing. We think it's well worth it, and paid subscriptions are literally the only reason that we are able to do what we do. Same goes if you're getting this in your inbox as a free subscriber. You can just head to direstraitspod.com. That's straits with a GH to upgrade. You'll get access to all of our pod episodes with no paywalls and other great bonus content.
Yes. Okay, jumping into it. So, shall we briefly? Yeah, I know.
Shall we breathe?
Just all collectively take a breath. Let us briefly recap what has been happening. We assume that if you are here or if you're listening after the fact, you're familiar with the uprising in Minnesota. In the past few weeks, we have seen the murder of two people, Alex Pretti and Renee Good.
Yes. And these deaths obviously struck a chord with a lot of Americans because outwardly, right, these are the people that DHS claims it is protecting, white American citizens. We also, I think it's significant that we have clear and extensive video footage of these murders. So the gap between, Kristi Noem's horrific disinformation and these killings and what we see with our own eyes has been stark. But it's very important to remember that these were not the first people and not even the first American citizens to be killed or brutalized by ICE, not even this year. Keith Porter was shot on New Year's Day in LA by an off-duty ICE officer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I believe that 9 people have been killed by ICE this year so far.
Yes. And I wrote a little bit about this last week at my newsletter, but The Guardian has reported that 2025 was ICE's deadliest year. 32 people died in custody, that we know of. And of course, brutal violence against citizens in America extends well beyond ICE into law enforcement, and it's not that this violence has not been well documented, but many white people have failed to reach the level of outcry and awareness that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing right now feels like, in many ways, a new level of fascist violence. With the state deploying its agents to lawlessly assault citizens with seemingly total impunity. But this, of course, all goes back to the earliest white settlers in the U.S.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. Anti-sovereign, anti-English arguments, pre-American Revolution in many respects actually arose in the colonies after slave revolts. And the threat of indigenous people refusing colonialism was made apparent. And this was all, in an effort to galvanize settlers against a common enemy, right? So namely the British Crown, rather than, say, white men in power, and an effort to distract from growing divisions. before the revolution, right? Later, of course, we know that slave patrols were used to terrorize Black people in the US, and the protection of white women's sexuality was repeatedly used as justification for the racial terror that white men and white women inflicted on Black citizens.
Right. Yeah. As lynching became common practice in America, claims of rape of white women were often used when actually what was being referenced was actually simply untrue, or they were referring to consensual interracial relationships. And the legal system was weaponized against Black men. Many were convicted of sexual crimes that they didn't actually commit, with little to zero evidence to allow for quote unquote legal lynchings.
Right. And very relevant to our purposes on this podcast, the narrative then, as now, was that white men were protecting white women and families and the national character, the national body from a nefarious enemy, right? So this process of othering or creating a common enemy runs very deep in America. So does state violence. Now the alleged enemy is what this administration frequently refers to as, rapists and predators. We can see the sexual politics there. But perhaps why we are seeing such an uprising now is because the transparency of this kind of assault, the limitlessness of it, and plainly the death of two white citizens has clarified for many that the government is not interested in keeping us safe, and never was.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people have rightly pointed out that calling ICE the Gestapo kind of distances what's happening now from the real history of America. I do think it's important to note, though, that the Gestapo also rationalized their violence as necessary to maintain not just so-called law and order, but specifically to protect women, children, and the family unit while committing ethnic cleansing. It's a common tactic to rationalize fascist state violence, right?
Right. And we're going to unpack sort of how that rhetoric is working in the US today in just a minute. But yeah, I mean, we know German Nazis were also instructing, so-called Aryan women to have lots of babies, claiming mothers were essential to the health of the state, giving out birthing medals, banning abortion and birth control for so-called Aryan women. Everything that we're seeing now, right? The Cross of Honor of the German Mother. These were awards given to women with 4 or more children. So bronze was 4 to 5 children, silver was 6 to 7, and gold was 8 or more. This was instituted in 1938 to encourage so-called Aryan population growth. So obviously these medals symbolize the regime's pronatalist policies. Again, sounds familiar. A
Well,
similar
totally.
medal has been floated, for this
Right.
administration. Nothing yet, but
Well, and also it just makes me think of the Heritage Foundation report that came out a few weeks ago, the same people who, are behind Project 2025, where they're talking about the need for creating economic incentives for people to have more babies within married couples, of course, and that you would get more economic benefit for having more babies, right?
yes. Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, there was a big backlash, I think, to the medals. So yeah, we haven't seen it yet. But you're right. Like there's all these other ways in which still these pronatalist policies are being escalated by this
Yeah.
administration. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about how we're seeing this protecting the family rhetoric play out right now with this administration. And specifically, not only the hyper masculine, but also hyper heterosexual politics of ICE.
Super straight masculine, yes.
Yeah.
I was in an organizing call last night, which was really amazing and grounding. But one thing that we discussed that I was thinking of for this conversation is that everything that we're seeing is part of what's called the authoritarian playbook, right? So tactics like silencing dissent, creating a scapegoat, dehumanizing and detaining, normalizing the unthinkable, controlling information, expanding surveillance and policing. And I was thinking, hetero rhetoric is the propaganda arm of all of this, right? It's the
Mhm.
narrative and the story that all of this hangs on, right? That excuses this behavior, this unconscionable violence. And the purpose of it, of course, is to rationalize what's happening, right? But also to remove us from our own collective power, right? And in our holiday episode, we talked about how Christmas is the marketing arm of the nuclear family. But, the sentimental white nuclear family itself is the marketing arm of authoritarianism. And again, we have seen this before play out in other authoritarian regimes.
Right, right. We even see a lot of the German Nazi propaganda explicitly echoed in recruitment ads for border agents today. And that obviously feels very intentional. We've seen all sorts of neo-Nazi dog whistles for ethnic cleansing and, straight up references to Nazi propaganda and visual rhetoric, like Greg Bovino's ridiculous coat, which I think we'll probably talk about,
Yeah.
have to talk about. But it's always under this premise of protecting the home, the family, the women, and the children.
Yes. Yeah. So I went down a rabbit hole looking at some of this propaganda. Most of it, sort of recruitment ads for ICE. We have seen, I've got a big list here. We've
God.
seen reference to a white nationalist song called By God, We'll Have Our Home Again. We've seen the slogan America for Americans, which is associated with the KKK. And this was accompanied by an image of George Washington on a horse that echoed KKK imagery. We've seen direct reference to a neo-Nazi book. The DHS has also recently used the painting American Progress. You may have seen this circulating online by John Gast, which is a well-known reference to Manifest Destiny, also known as settler colonialism. Um, the DHS Instagram, Tracy, is a whole vibe. I don't know how much time you've spent on it. Hopefully not much.
I've never actually clicked over there, thank God. But I've seen people posting about it. The
Yeah.
tweets and the Instagram post is wow. Yeah.
It's wild, but I mean, what I found was that it is clearly aimed at young, disaffected white men
Mhm.
who want to team up with their boys. You see that even in like the language that they use to fight the bad guys. It's incredibly juvenile, but in many cases, like these are not even necessarily ads so much as memes. One of the things I saw was a mix of Batman theme songs and Bible verses.
What a mashup. Yeah.
What a mashup. So it's clearly like this effort to tap into youth internet culture, right? There's a cartoon that they've used of a Dominican woman crying while being
Yeah.
arrested. And the aesthetic again is it's cartoonish, right? And again, like all this messaging comes back to protecting the family and women, but it is really this like be the good guys rhetoric that is that sort of hyper individualistic masculine protector vibe in a very juvenile packaging.
Yeah.
um there's one of the one of the things I found was a pinned post on the DHS account, Instagram account, with a couple different silhouetted women and children of various ages. And the caption was, "The promise of America is worth protecting." It's probably still pinned there because I just saw this, I think, yesterday. The promise of America is worth protecting. And the promise being, what white women and children, family, right? The
Yeah.
nuclear family. Um, There was also, the image of a white woman and a baby in a covered wagon, which people have probably seen now because that sort of made the rounds on social media. It's an image by artist Morgan Weistling, which was used without permission. So, yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot of AI slop. Um, so much stuff. Oh, earlier this week, the DHS published an image on their Instagram of a man under arrest with a caption that said, "Convicted sexual predator arrested." So they're really pushing that hard. We've seen that in Kristi Noem as well, right? Like, we're protecting white women, right?
Right. It's very explicit. Yeah.
Explicit.
How are you feeling after that deep dive?
I mean, it's interesting because, I don't know, when I look at this stuff, it's so buffoonish. It's so juvenile. It's hard to understand how people don't see it that way. Obviously, it's enraging, but it's also just silly.
It's so absurdist. Yeah.
So,
totally. Totally. Yeah. I also wanted to mention that, as Miss Magazine reported, there are a lot of different forms that ICE's misogynistic violence has taken. There has been the abuse of pregnant women in custody. ICE impersonators are abusing women, sometimes sexually. There's been the use of violent imagery and targeted recruitment to sow violence, violent misogynistic chaos in the streets. Experts have sounded the alarm, of course, about women remaining trapped in domestic abuse situations rather than risk ICE activity. We also know that children are being kidnapped and taken from their families and held in detention centers. There have been nearly 200 allegations of abuse from detainees in detention facilities across the nation. So, I mean, again, the absurdity of protecting women and children when quite the opposite is what is actually happening. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. The 19th also just reported this week that a woman named Cecil Alvier Quinones, a pregnant woman currently being held in a Louisiana detention facility, is being denied reproductive care and is separated from her children. So, I mean, yeah, exactly as you said, right? This false narrative that this is somehow, an initiative to protect families is completely bogus. And to be clear, it's not even that, the DHS is only interested in protecting white women and white children, because this is making all of our communities less safe, right? No one is safer here.
Right. And we also know that in Minnesota and across the country, children aren't going to school and aren't able to access healthcare because of this administration's immigration policies. So, yeah, not pro-family, not pro-child in any way.
No. So, now that we have that cleared up, should we talk about the very, very straight masculinity of this force of masked thugs?
Yeah. Should we start with Greg Bovino's coat?
Oh, great. Yes. Let's just make fun of it and laugh at it.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Yeah, it was described in the New York Times as a great coat. They're not saying it's a great coat. That's the name of it. It's a great coat.
The type of coat.
Yes. It is the long double-breasted army green coat with wide lapels, big metallic buttons, epaulettes, and insignia on the arms that, this is a quote from the Times, stands out amid the sea of bomber jackets and tactical vests worn by the ICE agents, as well as the masks worn by the ICE agents. That is a pretty dramatic sort of contrast that he shows up without the mask. Yeah, and it's obviously giving Nazi, and it's intended to give Nazi. I mean, this is not an accident, obviously.
No.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's part of how this administration has long signaled its solidarity with white supremacist groups, right? And Trump has refused to condemn these groups, even when he is directly asked to do so. There was, that presidential debate where he was asked to condemn white supremacists and militia groups. And he instead told the Proud Boys, the far-right Islamophobic and misogynist hate group, to stand back and stand by, before he added, "But I'll tell you what, somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left."
I mean, dude's been telling us who he is and what he wants to do for a really long
Yeah, it's no surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot this week, too, about the quote, he